swept away. I am good, you say I am good. I am worthy, wanted, loved by you. This is living, breathing proof that I am chosen, wanted, loved by you. I'm undone with love for you. There is a person, light running through his hands, speaking with kindness, brimming with gentleness, and he goes to the throne. He speaks straight to the soul, and I'm swept away. I am good, you say I'm good. I am worthy, wanted, loved by you. This is living, breathing proof that I am chosen, wanted, loved by you. I'm undone with love for you, and within all the joy, and through all of the waiting, I'm undone with love for you. And I could never forget the spirit that changed me. I'm undone with love for you. I'm undone with love for you. By the Father, love rushing through your veins, warm and devoted, tenderness filled with strength, able to the bone. You speak life to the soul, and I'm swept away. I'm swept
Good morning, Suncoast. How you guys doing? It's good to be here with you guys, and got some exciting news. We're about to play a new song, and this song is called Homeward, and it's from one of the guys from Hillsong United, Benjamin Hastings. And this song, it took me a while to kind of go through it, connect with it, because it was something that it's one of those prodigal son stories of, I've wrestled with you, God, over certain things in my life that I didn't expect or I didn't like or wasn't to my timing. But there's always this sense of kind of stepping back and refocusing on a bigger picture where we see the fullness of God in that, where, okay, I know I was trying to live my life by this timing and control the circumstances, but I can't control those. And in the midst of that chaos where I wrestle with God and more so myself, I find peace and comfort and joy. And I hope that you guys are experiencing that here as we represent the love of God. So let's do it. Cost me or how long it will last. But I told you I will follow, I'll never take it back. I hang on every word you ever said, for I know you're faithful. I'm still waiting on a well of promises, but I know you're able. If ever I stray, if ever I fall, won't you call me homeward? Won't you call me homeward? It's like seeing the invisible, yet somehow I see it. All that lies at the end of the road. I don't know the timing, I'm guessing it's not mine to know. Lord, help me believe it. All those days when I feel like I'm told, the faith isn't feeling, it's just trusting when you feel the most. But someday
darkness and shadows, my back to the light. I was lost in a fog till you caught my eye. Through the smoke and mirrors, a glimmer of life. I know there's a place I belong, where I'll see the fullness of love. A child face to face with my God, lost in your awesome wonder. While the rain, I will not be afraid. My faith will remain all the same. My hope in the things not yet seen, found in the greatest of gifts.
I found love in the moment, slowly alive. At the cross where the curtains were ripped from my eyes, I found heaven in pieces, a glimmer and dust. Broken glass in reflection till we shine like the sun. I know there's a place I belong, where I'll see the fullness of love. Shine face to face with my God, lost in your awesome wonder. While the way
will. The rage in me to still every wave at your name. Jesus, Jesus, you make the darkness tremble. Jesus, Jesus, you silence fear. Jesus, Jesus, you make the darkness tremble. Jesus, Jesus. Call these bones to live. Call these lungs to sing once again. I will praise Jesus, Jesus. You make the darkness tremble. Jesus, Jesus. You silence fear. Jesus, Jesus. You make the darkness tremble. Jesus, Jesus. Jesus, Jesus. You make the darkness tremble. Jesus, Jesus. You silence fear. Jesus, Jesus. You make the darkness tremble. Jesus, Jesus. Your name is a light that the shadows can't deny. Your name cannot be overcome. Your name is a light forever lifted high. Your name cannot be overcome. Jesus, Jesus, you make the darkness tremble. Jesus, Jesus, you silence fear. Jesus, Jesus, you make the darkness tremble. Jesus, 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 Jesus. Your name is a light that the shadows can't deny. Your name cannot be overcome. Your name is a light forever lifted high. Your name cannot be overcome. Your name is a light that the shadows can't deny. Your name cannot be overcome. Your name is a light forever lifted high. Your name cannot be overcome. Jesus, Jesus, you make the darkness tremble. Jesus, Jesus, you silence fear. Jesus, Jesus, you make the darkness tremble. Jesus, Jesus, Jesus.
Thank you guys so much for singing out with us. Enjoy the rest of the service.
Doubt, uncertainty, screaming harbingers of chaos that threaten our sense of peace. Are these harbingers the enemies of God? Or are these the very instruments by which the hero's humility is wrought? Humility that tunes the ear for whispers of truth. Epic.
Good morning, Suncoast. It's good to see you guys on this brisk Sunday morning, man. This weather's amazing, isn't it? Yeah, Pastor Larry is out of town. He is officiating one of his best friend's wedding in Memphis, I believe, this weekend. So he'll be back up next weekend. I have the honor and pleasure of delivering this morning's sermon. But if you're new here to Suncoast, man, we are so glad you are visiting us. You can see Pastor Kevin and Miss Susan out at Grand Central Station if you're interested in plugging in or learning about our mission partners and just the life of the community here at Suncoast. We have a great thing going on. There's a lot of excitement and great things are yet to come. Also, if you're joining us live in person or whether you're watching on one of our live stream platforms online, do us a favor, share this in your news feed. What we're seeing is that our reach expands as you share, and this life-changing message of God's radical love for all people gets to be spread. This week, we're in week 8 of the topic we've been calling Epic. And what we've been doing is looking at the life of the ministry of this Old Testament prophet named Elijah. And what we've been doing is following Elijah's sort of this up and down, highs and lows journey of his ministry as he's dealing with this highly contentious relationship between him, God, and the people of Israel and their leaders, King Ahab and his wife, Queen Jezebel. And what's happened, to kind of catch you up real briefly, Elijah came to Ahab and said, hey dude, you are steering this entire culture, this entire civilization of the Israelites away from their true God, Yahweh, into the worship of the god, this false god of nature named Baal. And he warned Ahab, if you continue down this road and you don't return back to the true God, God's presence is going to be removed from you and from the land. And that's exactly what happens. And then the drought comes in. And we all know drought, literally speaking of, is like dry and barren lands. But what we've been trying to do is sort of appropriate that, understand it, situate it in such a way as sometimes drought in our life can be spiritual in nature. When we feel like things are happening in our life where God has somehow left us or forgotten us, and he feels so far away. And we'll see that our own problems and predicaments and pains that we face are often spiritual droughts, just like the people of Israel were facing. So last week, I got to preach and we talked about this idea of God talking to Elijah, saying, go to Mount Carmel. Put me to the test against Baal and let's see who wins. So all of the Israelites gather on Mount Carmel. There are 2 sacrifice bulls on this altar that have been drenched with water. And Elijah looks at the prophets of Baal and say, now call on your God to consume the sacrifice. Nothing happens. And then Elijah calls on Yahweh, the God of the Israelites, and fire comes down from heaven, consumes both offerings, and torches the water. This is an amazing, miraculous event that should have turned, in Elijah's mind, everyone back to the true God. Like, what other evidence do you need that he is real? But instead, what we found out last week, after this amazing experience, Jezebel sends him a little love letter saying what? You're dead, bro. I'm coming with full force after you. If we've never come after you before, now we are. And Elijah runs away in fear. But through our study, we saw his fear was not grounded in fear of Jezebel or even in fear of death. He even asked God, yo, I'm done. Take my life. His fear was based upon his frustration at an unmet expectation. He expected that after the fire would come down and consume these offerings, that everyone would just miraculously and automatically turn back to God. This is not what happens. It does not play out the way that Elijah expects. He views himself as a failure, like all of the other prophets before him who tried to do the exact same thing, turn the people back to God. He runs away, and we saw last week he collapsed under his own strength. But then what happened? God comes to him and gives him divine nourishment. And Elijah gets up, rejuvenated, runs 40 days and 40 nights to the mountain of God called Mount Sinai or Mount Horeb. And it's there that Elijah goes to this very spectacular and special cave. It's the cave that Moses was in when God actually passes by Moses and allows Moses to see the backside of God. Now, here is Elijah today in that very cave, waiting in the silence, alone, watching for God. He has again raised his elevation of expectation, but this time it's not on himself to do anything. He's not expecting people to turn to God. His expectation is that God will show up here because he has before. God is going to show up and recalibrate my mission. God is going to show up and rejuvenate my faith. God is going to show up and reassure me of this wealth of promises that he has given to me and to his people. How many of you guys have a promise or some sort of expectation you have of God in your life right now? Anybody? Like I have one, I'm waiting just for my children to come for Thanksgiving. And man, I have this heightened sense of expectation that when they get here, they're gonna be well behaved and, listen to everything daddy says. And it may fail, right? But for us, what I want to do today, the hope of this sermon is to inspire and incite inside of you that God is a God who keeps his promises, even if it may not be in the way we think he should. So let's take a look at the verse today and see what's up with Elijah. It comes from 1 Kings. Here's what it says. And the word of the Lord came to him. What are you doing here, Elijah? If you're taking notes, I want you to write that down. Except don't put Elijah's name in it, put your name in it. What are you doing here, Mike? What are you doing here, Larry? What are you doing here, Troy? Like that's a rhetorical question because let me give you this. God will never ask you a question in order for you to give him knowledge that he doesn't have. Think about that. God doesn't need to know information he already knows. So this question is gonna come back to kind of haunt Elijah and us maybe in a moment. Elijah replies, I have been very zealous for the Lord God Almighty, but the Israelites have rejected your covenant, torn down your altars, and put all of your prophets to death with the sword. I'm the only one left. And now they're trying to kill me too. Then the Lord said, go out and stand on the mountain in the presence of God, for the Lord is about to pass by. Oh, Elijah's like, oh, snap. Here he comes, just like I expected he would. Then a great and powerful wind tore the mountain apart and shattered the rocks. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, there was a mighty earthquake, but the Lord was what? Not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake came fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, a gentle whisper. And when Elijah heard this strange sound, he pulled his cloak over his face and went out and stood at the mountain, at the mouth of the cave. And then the voice came to him and asked, time number 2, what are you doing here, Elijah? He gives the same answer. I've been jealous or zealous for the Lord, and the Israelites have rejected your covenant, tore down your altars, put your prophets to death. I am the only one left. And now they're trying to kill me. Then the Lord said, I'm going to paraphrase this, go back the way you came and anoint Hazael king over Aram. Also anoint Jehu, son of Nishmi, king over Israel, and anoint Elisha, son of Shaphat from Abel, to succeed you as prophet. This is an amazing verse of what's taking place here. Which leads me to jump right into point 1 for us today, is this. God will not be defined by your box. God will not be defined by my box. Why? Because my box is too limited. My box is too small. My expectations and dreams for my life are too small when compared to what God has in store for me or what God has promised me. You know, I have a friend, he lives in England, his name's Michael. He's a good friend of mine, and he's one of these guys who's always like, hey, Troy, don't put me in a box, don't label me. Of which I go, bro, that's the first box and first label I'm putting on you, the don't label me, don't put me in a box, right? It's impossible for us humans to not signify or sort of categorize things. But when it comes to God, especially in this verse, Elijah is in a cave waiting for God to show up like he's done in the past. And what happens? The first thing that comes is this huge gust of wind that shakes the mountain, tears it apart, it says. But yet God's not in that wind. Then an earthquake rattles the mountain. And Elijah looks for God in the grandioseness of that earthquake. He's not there. Then fire comes down from heaven again. Elijah just saw fire a couple of days ago, and he's looking for God in sort of the spectacular nature of that element, fire. And guess what? God's not there. And he's like, what the frick? Why? Because he knows all the stories that have been handed down to him through the generations. Fire. Gee whiz, how did God appear to Moses? In a what? Burning bush, fire. Moses knows that story, that God can be in it. When Job is going through all of his traumatic life experiences of God taking things away from him, how does God speak to Job? In a big whirlwind. Moses and Elijah would know that story. Elijah's like, he's not in the wind. And then this earthquake, when God gave the 10 commandments to the people of Israel on the same mountain, he shook it so violently and sent the commandments. Elijah knows that story, but God's not here either. Just because God has worked a certain way in the past does not mean that God will work that way in the future. You don't have to be a stockbroker or some sort of financial expert to know that past performances do not guarantee future results. Let me tell this to you. Maybe God is doing a new thing so you don't have to have the same old thing in your life. For Moses, fire. For Job, a whirlwind. For the people of Israel, an earthquake. For Elijah, he's not in those things. For Elijah, it was what? A whisper. A whisper. The ultimate manifestation of God in this story is surprising to Elijah. It takes him aback so much that he covers his face almost in fear. And what's interesting, if you read any of like the Hebrew mystics, they tell us like the very name of God, Yahweh, is constituted within our breath, like Yahweh, Yahweh. And God breathes breath into the first person mystically, right, in the person of Adam. And what's interesting, every person in this room, when you were born, the first breath you take is a what? An inhale. And when you die, the last breath you give is a what? Exhale. That's what makes death sort of beautiful. It's like God taking back what is his, right? And the very name of God is itself a whisper. But isn't it just like God though? When you come to try to study and know and spend time with God, praying, meditating, it's just like God to screw up our boxes that we want to place him in. When you think God should show up as fire, he shows up as wind. When you think God should show up as wind, he shows up as an earthquake. When you think he should show up as an earthquake, he shows up as a whisper. James Thurber, he's one of my favorite American cartoonists. He wrote this one time, a very famous saying. He says this, beautiful things never ask for attention. Beautiful things never ask for attention. Beautiful things don't need selfies. God, in the same way, does not need to show up and manifest his power, his presence in those things we as humans have deemed appropriate for him. Does that make sense? He comes sometimes in the most humble and silent of ways. I love that song we just sang, Tremble. That verse, it says, you silence fear. Sometimes fear is silenced in silence, in meditation with God. But I get it. We live in a culture that is totally distracted. Like we're totally distracted by things. And things like silence, we call it what? We have a word for it. We call it awkward silence. right? Humility, like these things are often foreign to us. Why? Because our culture loves the spectacular. We love the horrific. Serial killer documentaries are more popular than any other documentary series online on any streaming network. We love the dramatic in our culture. Reality TV, that's my little guilty pleasure too. Yo, I love Real Housewives of New York. That's like my jam. I love 90 Day Fiance, like that's my jam. Why? Because we love it. There's no need to run from it. There's no need to be embarrassed, but it's just the truth about who we are. We love the dramatic. We glorify athletes because of their athletic prowess. I mean, you think about it today. Like I'm gonna watch, my Saints play. And what do? How many guys have ever been to a professional football game? Yeah, the oversized man, right, runs an inflated pigskin across a painted line. And how does the stadium react? Great job, great job. He must have did a lot of push-ups for that. No, the stadium erupts with ardent worship of that accomplishment, right? They're like, yeah. And everybody's dressed the same. It's like a weird cult, like everybody's like, yeah, go. I'm not a huge Cowboys fan, but that star always was, like a target, like, oh man, that is a cult in Dallas. Our culture revels in the grandiose display of our celebrities. Like we give celebrities voices on important global topics that they have no idea about. But because they're celebrity, like, look, dude, I love The Rock. I love Dwayne Johnson. But if that dude runs for president, oh my gosh, what? I got big muscles. That'll change. That's the change we need. We love celebrities. That's just part of our culture. We love big things. We love grandiose things. We love spectacular things because it keeps us entertained. It keeps us distracted. There are two thinkers I want to bring up today that have influenced my sort of philosophy and thinking. On one hand, it's this guy, George Orwell. He wrote a book. The book is not 1918. That's a misprint. It's 1984. So Orwell writes this, and look at what he fears. In this book, he talks about Big Brother. He feared that books would be banned, that information would be deprived from us, and it would deprive us of our self-worth. He feared that truth would be concealed from us by people in absolute power. And he feared that people in our society would be controlled by inflicting pain and bewilderment upon them. Like everyone loves to talk about Orwellian psychology or Orwellian culturalism. It's a great book. But there's a little less known book that I love by a man named Aldous Huxley, who wrote Brave New World. And in it, look at what he fears. He feared that books won't need to be banned at all because no one's gonna wanna read. He didn't fear that there'd be information restricted. He said there's gonna be too much information, so much so that it's gonna create an ego-driven, selfish society. Ever heard of Google? Ever heard of, we have a new English word, what was it, 2016, the word selfie became a word. I like to call it taking a lonely, like you're just all by yourself taking a selfie. He feared that truth would be drowned out in a sea of irrelevance. No one would care about truth anymore. And he feared that people won't be controlled because of pain or bewilderment. He said you control the population by inflicting too much pleasure and too much entertainment. This idea, this Huxleyan way of thinking has not only infiltrated our society, it's infiltrated our sanctuaries. If our worship services aren't entertaining, if they're not grandiose displays of spectacle, lights, and bedazzlement, God must not be in it. If our communicators don't create dynamic and creative sermons, God must not be in it. Listen to what Jesus says in Matthew chapter 15. This is a great passage. It's in the Message translation. Jesus is speaking to the woman at the well. Listen to what he says. People will make a big show of saying and doing the right things, but their hearts are far from me. Their hearts are far from me. Why? Just like Elijah looking for God in the grandioseness of all those spectacular elements of nature, fire, wind, earthquakes. We look for God in lights, volume, creativity. And Jesus is like, yo, people make a big show, but their hearts are far from me. What transforms a human heart is not the spectacular or the grandiose, but the gentle breath of God's Spirit speaking to you and affirming his grace to you. That's what changes a human heart. In verse 10 and 11, Elijah is asked this question by God, what are you doing here? And Elijah says, I've been zealous for God. I've been seeking God. Everyone else hates you. They're running away. They're trying to kill me. He even says this, I'm the only one left. Does that sound sort of egotistical? I'm the only one left. Essentially what he's telling God, yo, God, if they get me, you're out of business. You're out of business. Why? No one else knows you like I do. No one else has the truth about you like I do. No one else can see what I can see. No one else can do what I can do except me, God. Sounds like a lot of modern fundamentalist religious belief, right? Believe what we believe our doctrines, believe our creeds. If you don't believe it all, you're out. You know, you got the Pentecostals over here looking over at the Baptists going, they don't have enough spirit. You got the Methodists over here looking at the Pentecostals going, that's too much emotion in the service. You got the Catholics going, what? The bread really does turn into the body of Jesus, right? And then you have some of the more Southern Baptist convention going, all y'all wrong, we got it right. Believe this or you're out. And essentially what happens is that everyone claims to have the absolute truth about who God is or who God should be. And if you don't agree with this, you're out. There's no room for doubt or uncertainty. Why? Because we're so distracted. We like certainty. We like being entertained and distracted from seeking truth on our own. We outsource our faith. We just simply say, preacher, tell me what to believe. And that's a very dangerous thing to do. Doubt and certainty are almost necessary things. And it brings me to point number 2 today. Doubt and uncertainty are not enemies of God. They're actually instruments of God that God can use in the midst of you going through this process in your life, trying to find God in certain things to see, God, what do you want me to do? Where do you want me to go? Neurologists tell us that we have sort of this biological need for certainty. When I'm able to predict where my foot will land when I walk, when I make an investment on a particular stock that I take a guess on and I predict it'll do well, and it does. When I pick out a new furniture piece for my home that should look good with my decor and it goes in and we're like, yes. The brain releases endorphins that act like chemical rewards for our bodies when we're able to think things through in a certain way that gives us a certain amount of certainty. However, when uncertainty hits, and you're uncertain about some future event, your brain responds to that sort of like a mental pain, something that needs to be avoided. And here's when your fight or flight reflexes kick in. Look at Elijah. He is certain God is in the wind. Nope. He is certain God must be in this earthquake. Nope. He is certain God has to be in the fire. Nope. How does God come? In a strange, soft whisper. It's so strange to Elijah, he covers his face in fear and uncertainty. And history is full of examples of how we were absolutely certain about things. And if you didn't believe it, you were out. 400 years ago, everyone was certain that the geocentric model was true, that the earth was the center of the galaxy, until we looked at the universe through Galileo's telescope. And what did the church do to Galileo? Bye. 2,000 years ago, the Jewish community in Palestine was absolutely certain that God would send the Messiah in the form of this conquering emperor from heaven. But yet, who did God send? A poor nobody from Nazareth. Doubt and uncertainty actually become instruments of God when my thinking or trying to place God in a box has reached its limit. And then doubt and uncertainty kick in. And here's the fact. God is not upset when you have doubt, when you have uncertainty. It's not like God has this insecurity problem in heaven going, oh my God, what? What? Oh, Jonathan, you're doubting me? Here's $1 million. No, it's not how God works. It'd be nice though, right? But here's what happens. When I face doubt and uncertainty, God is showing me and reminding me that who I am, where I am, and what I think and believe do not define the totality of reality. In other words, I say it this way. God shows me that my world is not the world, that there's a bigger thing going on that I'm a part of, that God is leading. Some people believe things that you don't believe. Some things hold to things that are true that you don't believe in. Guess what? It's okay. Breathe. It's okay. And this leads me to my last point today. Because with God, sometimes unity, that's why we're wearing my unity shirt. Unity is more important than certainty. If you look at the last part of that verse I read, if you don't study it real well, you're just like, yeah, God's just telling him, go back where you came from, anoint this guy king. No, in the last part of that verse, Elijah is commanded to go and anoint Hazael king. Hazael. Do a study on that guy. He was not Jewish, and he was not a follower of Yahweh. Why would God do that? Because God saw something that Hazael would do to bring unity as opposed to the fulfilling of Elijah's need for certainty. Sometimes God craves unity more than our need for certainty. Here's an example. Christmas Eve on 1914, 8:30 in the evening, Allied troops from Britain were engaged in a bloody and muddy battle against the German soldiers. It's Christmas Eve, and as the shooting ceased for the evening, the New York Times reported this. A man by the name of Graham Williams of the 5th London Rifle Brigade described it in detail. Listen to what he says. First, the Germans began to sing Christmas carols in their own language. And then we would sing one of ours until we started singing, O Come All Ye Faithfuls. The Germans immediately joined in singing the same hymn to the Latin words, Adeste Fidelis. And I thought, well, this is really the most extraordinary thing. Two nations singing the same carol in the middle of war, who are dead set against each other's certain position. The next morning, the sun rose, Christmas Day. There was no shooting or fighting in this particular area. And we have this image. This is an image of German and British soldiers playing soccer together on Christmas Day in the midst of a heated battle where both sides dug their trenches of certainty. Sometimes, just sometimes, God requires unity. And this is a beautiful image of that. I want you to stand with me this morning as I close this out. We've all looked for God in places where we thought God would absolutely be, and he wasn't there. But maybe today should inspire us. Maybe God is wanting to speak to us in a new way, in a soft way, in a silent way. So my challenge to you this morning is take God out of that box and just let God be God in your life. Let him speak to you the way that he needs to speak to you in this moment. That your ideas of certainty about who God is or who God should be are too small for who God actually is. So let me pray for you. Father, I pray for my friends that they would walk out of these doors inspired and changed, transformed by the fact that you are God and we are not. And that God, it's in the silence, in the humbleness of our being that you often change our hearts in radical ways. You're not always in the fire. You're not always in the earthquake. You're not always in the wind, but you are still the God of the fire, of the earthquake, and of the wind. And you are also the God of these people here today. So I pray for my friends. I pray for me, because I know you love us, God. It's in your name we pray. Amen. Thank you, Suncoast.